So far in our journey through industrial plant design, we've talked a lot about the core equipment, the pumps, the vessels, the exchangers. You can think of those as the buildings in our industrial city. But now, we need to talk about the highway system that connects all of them, and that is the pipe rack. Inside a process unit, the pipe rack is really the dominant structure. It's the spine of the entire plant, carrying all the process lines between equipment, the big utility headers that feed the plant, and of course, the electrical cables that power it.
And that quote really hits on a crucial point. If you fill up the rack inefficiently, you're just forcing the civil engineers to build wider, heavier, and more complex steel structures that can cost a project millions. So, in this explainer, we're going to break down the strategic logic behind rack routing, the elevation tiers, and really, how you organize what seems like a chaotic flow of thousands of lines into one orderly system.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the rack's fundamental purpose as the plant's routing backbone. Then, we'll get into the vertical elevation strategy, a really key concept. After that, we'll cover the horizontal segregation of services. And finally, we'll touch on some real-world design issues, things like road crossings and constructability, before we wrap it all up with a clean technical summary.
So, first things first, what exactly is a pipe rack, and why do we keep calling it the routing backbone?
Well, at its core, a pipe rack is a multi-level steel framework. It's made of vertical columns and horizontal beams, which we often call struts. And in a typical EPC project, the rack is one of the very first things we design and build, because it's pretty simple. You can't install the piping until the rack is there to support it.
It really has two primary functions. First, it supports the main headers. These are the large arteries of steam, water, and air that have to run the entire length of the unit. And second, it provides a clear, organized path for all the process lines to travel from one piece of equipment to another. Now, this slide shows one of the strictest disciplines in pipe rack design. We route pipes in the rack running either north-south, and we route pipes that are entering or leaving the rack running east-west. We never, ever route diagonally. This orthogonal grid, it's what allows for organized expansion and easy support later on. If you violate this grid, and you'll see people try, if you start routing lines at random angles inside that rack, you create what we call bird cages. It's a tangled mess that makes any future expansion basically impossible. You have to respect the geometry of the spine. Okay, so now that we understand the horizontal layout, let's look at the vertical dimension. And I'd say the single most critical decision you'll make in rack design is the tier strategy. The fundamental question is, which pipes go on which level?
We don't just place pipes randomly. There is a very strict vertical hierarchy we follow. Up at the top tier, that's generally reserved for electrical and instrumentation cable trays. And why is that? Well, it's simple. Pipes leak. If a water line bursts, it's going to rain down on everything below it. If that water hits a high-voltage cable tray, you've just caused a power outage. So placing electrical items at the top protects them. The middle tiers are usually for utility headers, things like steam, air, and water. These lines run the full length of the rack, and you need frequent access to them for branch connections. And then the bottom tier is typically for the process lines. We keep them low because they're often heavy, they're large bore, and they need to drop out frequently to connect to equipment nozzles, which are also down low.
Now, within those tiers, we also have to segregate lines based on their temperature and their service. This is all about horizontal organization. As a rule, you should group your hot lines together and your cold lines together. And this isn't for aesthetics, it's a practical necessity for insulation space. Think about it. A 10-inch line that's operating at 400 degrees Celsius might have 100 millimeters of insulation wrapped around it. If you place that line right next to a bare pipe without accounting for that insulation thickness, the pipes are going to clash in the field during construction. It's a guaranteed problem. And this illustrates two other key placement principles. First, we often place very hot lines on the higher piping tiers. The reason is that hot lines expand, and they need what we call expansion loops, these large U-shapes in the pipe. By placing them on the top piping level, their expansion loops can extend upwards into free space where there's nothing to interfere with them. Secondly, we always try to place the largest, heaviest pipes near the columns. This is just good structural engineering. It transfers the load directly down to the concrete foundations. If you put a heavy 30-inch water line right in the center of the beam, that beam is going to sag, and you'll need massive, expensive steel to support it.
A pipe rack isn't just a shelf. It's also a bridge. We have to design for how it interacts with the real world, and critically, how it's actually going to be built.
So at various points, the rack is going to have to cross over access roads. And when it does, the elevation strategy has to change. You absolutely must maintain a minimal clearance, typically around 6 meters for heavy haul routes, to allow cranes, fire trucks, and other large vehicles to pass underneath safely.
So what does that mean for your piping? Well, it often has to rise up to clear the road. And when it does that, it creates a high pocket that can trap liquid. As a designer, it's your job to make sure these pockets have properly located drain points so they can be emptied.
This is the question you must always be asking yourself. Thinking about constructability, it's not optional, it's a core part of the job. Modern racks are very often built as modules in a factory somewhere, then shipped to the site and lifted into place. And what this means is that your pipes cannot weave in and out of the steel structure. They must sit on the beams, not thread through the bracing. If you route a pipe through the cross bracing of a modular rack, that module simply cannot be assembled. It's physically impossible. So you always have to ensure there's clear access from above for the construction team to lower the pipes into place. All right, let's go ahead and summarize the core strategy for a good pipe rack design. First, remember, the rack is the backbone. It organizes the entire flow of the plant, so you must maintain that strict north-south, east-west, orthogonal grid. Second, the tier hierarchy is absolutely critical. Electrical and instrumentation go on top for protection, utilities in the middle for easy access, and your heavy process lines go on the bottom. Third, segregation. We group hot lines together to manage insulation, and we place them high to allow for expansion loops, while the heavy lines go near the columns to manage the load. And finally, always design for constructability. You have to plan for road clearance, and you must make sure that pipes can be lifted into the rack without weaving through the steel bracing. So we've now covered the world of piping up in the air. But not all lines can run overhead. Some systems, for example, rely on gravity to work, or are simply too large and heavy even for the rack. In our next explainer, we'll take a look at underground routing and talk about when it's actually preferred over routing on the pipe rack.